Let me ask you a question. Have you caught yourself meeting with someone like, say, a friend, a boss, a colleague, teacher, spouse, parent, or child? And when the interaction finally ends, you take a deep breath and think, ah, thank God that's over. I have had several such people in my life, and for a long time, I thought my exhaustion came from the situation I was in. But now I'm starting to see it very differently. The thing that exhaustion comes from is the emotional labor. Because while the conversation appears to be about homework or work or responsibilities or rules, expectations, or performance, something else is often happening underneath. You're not just dealing with the issue anymore, you're dealing with the emotional chaos. Because some people don't just invite us into a discussion, they invite us into an emotional arena surrounding the discussion. And the work isn't the work, the disagreement isn't the disagreement, the mistake isn't the mistake. And very quickly it becomes guilt, shame, defensiveness, proving, explanation, reactions, playing victim. And somewhere in the middle of all that, we stop dealing with the issue and start feeding the emotion around the issue. And that's where our energy goes. I hope you are relating to these situations already. Now, I've often wondered what's happening underneath these patterns that we see ourselves in. And the image that comes to mind is something like someone carrying a cup, not an empty cup, but a cracked cup. You pour your encouragement into it, it leaks. You pour your attention into it, it leaks. You pour your reassurance into it, it leaks. You pour your love into it, it still leaks. Nothing seems to stay for very long. And because nothing stays, the person keeps reaching outward. Not because they're bad, not because they're trying to hurt anyone, because they're hungry. Because something inside them never feels settled. The difficult part is that if you care about them, you naturally try harder. You explain more, you reassure more, you defend yourself more, you engage more, you pour more of yourself into that cup. Not realizing the problem was never the amount you poured, the problem was the crack. And until the person carrying the cup is willing to see the crack, nothing really changes. So here's where the conversation becomes practical. Because many people listening to this cannot simply walk away, because more often than not, there is a power difference. You're probably not the one who can call it an end, because you're dealing with either a parent, a spouse, a teacher, and you can't overrule these power differences, right? So the question is not, how do I make them stop? The question is, how do I stop becoming trapped inside this? And the answer might be simpler than we think. At least for me, the way I see it now, or what's worked for me, is a simple question that I ask. And perhaps it could be the most powerful question to get out of the trap. The question is, what exactly would you like me to do? Not sarcastically, not dismissively, but genuinely. What exactly would you like me to do? Because that question creates clarity. If there is an action required, we take the action. If there's a correction required, we make the correction. If there is a responsibility that belongs to us, we own it. And then stop. Because beyond that point, you may no longer be solving the issue. You may simply be feeding the drama around the issue. And that's where many of us lose ourselves. The moment we spend more energy managing someone else's emotions than managing our own responsibility, we have crossed the line. Because now you are out of your control area. You are in their territory, managing their business. Now, this might seem like becoming cold, but it isn't. It may seem like being indifferent or that we stop caring, but it isn't. Let me tell you why. Have you heard this analogy, not my monkey, not my circus? At first, it sounds dismissive, but I don't think it is. I think it's wisdom. Because every one of us has a circus, a limited amount of attention, a limited amount of emotional energy, a limited amount of time. And the truth is, very few monkeys genuinely belong to us. I believe it should be ourselves, and if we are parents, the children who still depend upon us. Everything else requires conscious choice. And maybe peace does not always come from leaving the circus. Sometimes we can't. The circus remains exactly where it is. But something changes inside us. We stop confusing the performance as our responsibility. We stop running into the ring every time the spotlight turns on. We deal with what needs to be dealt with and leave the rest behind. And after you have seen the same show enough times, you start recognizing the pattern. The light comes on, the ringmaster appears, the monkey starts swinging from trapeze to trapeze, and the familiar drama begins. And instead of rushing into the center of the ring, you smile. Not because the behavior is funny, but because the pattern is familiar. Because you realize, okay, that's the circus starting again. And in that moment, you remember something important. You don't have to perform. You don't have to explain endlessly. You don't have to defend endlessly. You don't have to fill the cup you cannot repair. And you don't have to feed a hunger you cannot satisfy. You can care without carrying. You can help without absorbing. You can understand without surrendering your peace. And when the show is over, you quietly return to the only circus you were ever truly responsible for. Your circus. And if you're a parent, the children who still depend upon you. Everything else belongs to someone else's ring. And perhaps wisdom is not learning how to stop every circus. Probably wisdom is learning which circus is actually yours. Because peace may not begin where the drama ends. Sometimes peace begins when we stop volunteering to become part of it.